A girl enters a fight club looking for a boxer named Carter Ford. The bartender points toward a heavily tattooed man and tells her that's the guy she's looking for. Carter had already knocked out 6 fighters one after another, and no one there seemed capable of matching him. That's when the story's hero, Dalton, enters. He accepts Carter's challenge, and the moment he steps into the ring, Carter freaks out and runs away. This reaction alone shows just how dangerous Dalton must be. According to the club's rules, the last man standing in the ring is declared the winner of the fight night. So Dalton is announced as the champion and given the prize money. As he steps out of the club with his winnings, a bookie stabs him, blaming him for losing $500. Clearly, the guy had bet on Carter. Despite the stab wound, Dalton stays cool and forgives the bookie. Soon after, the same girl who came looking for Carter approaches Dalton. She introduces herself as Frankie, the owner of a bar named Roadhouse in Florida. She explains that the place is constantly overrun by troublemakers and the police don't help. She's looking for a bouncer to handle the chaos and offers Dalton $5,000 a week for the job. But Dalton declines her offer. Still, Frankie gives him her number before leaving. Dalton has no house, no family. He just parks his car wherever he wants and sleeps there. One night, feeling hopeless, he drives on a train tracks and waits for death. As the train approaches, he realizes it's not his time to die, starts the car, and escapes just in time, but not without damage, as the train smashes the rear of his car. Now, without even a car to live in, Dalton decides to take a bus to Florida the next morning. Upon arriving in Florida, he meets a girl named Charlie who runs a small bookstore along the highway. She tries to sell him a book based on a local tree, but Dalton doesn't have money. Still, she gifts him the book. Charlie and her father are both kind and helpful. Using their directions, Dalton reaches Roadhouse. Inside the bar, he meets the bartender, Julia, a beautiful, chubby woman. A waiter recognizes Dalton immediately. He's his idol. The place looks stunning by the ocean, and Dalton is mesmerized by its peaceful vibe. But as night falls, chaos erupts. 2 parties break into a fight. Bottles are smashed. Heads are cracked. A waiter named Billy somehow manages to settle things down. Then a biker gang storms in and starts wrecking the place without any reason. Even Frankie is too scared to stop them. When they start harassing a female server, Dalton intervenes and calmly tries to defuse the situation. But as the saying goes, ghosts don't leave without a kick. So Dalton threatens to torch their bikes, lures them outside, and delivers a heavy dose of slaps and punches. After beating them up, he borrows Frankie's car and takes them to the hospital. As he's about to leave the hospital, a doctor notices Dalton's bleeding wound and treats him. During this, the two strike up a conversation and start getting to know each other. Meanwhile, some thugs are already outside the hospital spying on Dalton. They're clearly plotting something big. Back at Roadhouse, Frankie pays Dalton his salary so he can arrange a place to stay. But Dalton has already grown fond of the place and chooses to live on an old boat Frankie owns. Frankie agrees, but warns him there's a crocodile nearby that recently ate her dog. So if Dalton wants to stay, he'll have to be careful. Even the old man nearby gives him the same warning. The next morning, Dalton wakes up to Julia calling out to him with breakfast in hand. She tells him that they've hired many bouncers before, but none stayed more than 2 days. Julia was so frustrated, she was thinking about quitting her job, but now she has hope in Dalton. She believes he'll fix everything and bring peace back to Roadhouse. After their chat, Dalton visits Charlie's bookstore again. He needs to use a computer. Charlie may look innocent, but she can judge people well. She senses that Dalton is trustworthy and lets him use her computer without hesitation. While Dalton is working, some thugs outside start harassing a local shopkeeper. Charlie immediately grabs a bat and confronts them, but they don't take her seriously until they spot Dalton. The fear kicks in. Turns out, Dalton had already beaten one of them the previous night. They panic and flee. Dalton realizes Charlie shouldn't be left alone at the store and asks about her parents. She reveals that her mother passed away 4 years ago and her father has taken a second job to keep the family afloat, as selling books isn't enough in this area. Understanding Charlie's struggles, Dalton returns to Roadhouse. On the other hand, we finally see the villain of the story, Brunt. He's the one who sends men to wreck Roadhouse. Though he wants the destruction to continue, his right-hand man Dell is still in the hospital, so he lays low for now. During this break in attacks, Roadhouse flourishes. Tourists return in large numbers, and the bar's income doubles. Everything starts looking up. One night, as Dalton is heading to a restaurant for dinner, a car tries to run him over. He barely dodges it, but the driver doesn't stop. He reverses and slams into Dalton, pushing his car off a bridge. 2 people exit the vehicle and flee, while Dalton and his car crash into the water below. Luckily, he survives and drags himself back to the boat. But someone is already there, Dell, holding a gun and waiting. Dalton seizes the right moment and attacks. After a fierce fight, he throws Dell through a window and into the water. Despite everything, Dalton still tries to save him. But fate has other plans. Right before his eyes, a crocodile devours Dell. His body is never recovered by police. Now Dalton knows he must get to the bottom of why the biker gang has been targeting Roadhouse for months. There has to be a reason. But Frankie refuses to reveal anything, which makes Dalton suspicious. He begins to think maybe Frankie is running a drug operation behind the bar's front. He goes to Charlie and checks the routes in and out of Roadhouse. Smuggling drugs by road seems impossible. The waters around the place are filled with rocks, making it tough for ships too. As he heads back, still confused, a man suddenly stops him at gunpoint and forces him into a car. Dalton soon learns that Brunt, the main villain, wants to meet him. While keeping the man distracted in conversation, Dalton breaks 2 of his fingers so he can never hold a gun again and quietly escapes. When Brunt hears about it, he is furious. A model of a hotel sits on Brunt's desk, hinting at his true goal. He wants to take over Roadhouse to build something of his own. Just then, Dalton got a call from his dad in jail. "You won't be able to handle this, son. Step back." Turns out, his dad had already hired someone else for the job. That man's name was Knox. He was on the run after causing chaos at someone's house. In real life, this guy is a major UFC fighter. Many of you might even recognize him. The next morning, Dr. Ellie, the one who had patched up Dalton earlier, showed up with a boat to meet him. Until now, they used to casually meet during breakfast, but today she came directly to his place. Dalton couldn't refuse her, and they headed out to sea. Dalton had no idea where she was taking him. When he found out, he tried to brush her off by saying he wasn't a good man, that he was a disgraced fighter. But Ellie didn't care. She had read all about him online before agreeing to the date. Then she made her intentions clear. Meanwhile, Knox reached Brant's lair after escaping the cops. He met one of Brant's goons there, and soon Brant himself arrived. They began planning how to take down Dalton, waiting for sunset to make their move. Dalton and Ellie returned from their date, only to be picked up by the police for questioning in Dale's case. They took him to a senior inspector. This officer tried to intimidate Dalton, threatening to frame him in a fake case or have him killed in an encounter. But Dalton wasn't one to scare easily. He flatly refused to leave the city, which made the cops drag him out and beat him up. The inspector even pulled a gun on him. That's when Ellie stormed in. She slapped the inspector right across the face and pulled Dalton away in front of everyone. Turns out, the inspector was her father. That's how she managed to pull this off. She revealed that her father was a corrupt cop. He used to help Brant's father with drug smuggling. When the old man went to prison, he started working for Brant instead. Now Dalton finally understood everything. Frankie had lied to bring him here. Elsewhere, some goons were shown approaching Charlie's bookstore, carrying iron rods and cans of gasoline. By now, evening had fallen, and the club was packed. Just then, Knox showed up and tried to force a girl to dance with him. He also started breaking things for no reason. When Billy tried to intervene, Knox beat him badly with a golf club. Then 4 guys jumped in at once, but Knox handled them all by himself. This gave courage to others who had been hiding in fear for days. Everyone began fighting back, venting their anger. Dalton tried to reason with Knox, telling him to take his men and leave. But Knox had come specifically to take Dalton down. A massive fight broke out between the two. Knox's crew beat Dalton so badly he could barely think. He was about to leave everything behind when Ellie arrived with the police. Seeing the cops, everyone scattered. Dalton packed his things and left. As he passed Charlie's bookstore, he saw it had been burned down. The police told him Charlie and his dad had been hospitalized. Just then, Dalton's bus arrived. He was about to leave, but something had shifted in him. They shouldn't have hurt Charlie. He went straight to Brant's lair and found the same guy who burned the bookstore. That guy admitted to everything, burning the place and beating up that stubborn girl. In one swift move, Dalton snapped the man's neck. As the man lay dying, Dalton confessed that he wasn't afraid of others, only of his own rage. That same rage had once cost him everything. The last time he lost control in the ring, he killed his opponent. That's when the UFC canceled his contract, and no organization wanted to touch him. His life spiraled, and one night, he even tried to end it all. Dalton was loading the body into a car when another of Brant's men arrived. Dalton asked him where Brant was. The guy was already terrified and didn't know the exact location, but he had overheard that Brant's crew would be at Harvest Key at 5 a.m. for a big money deal. The biker promised to leave the city forever and took off. The next morning, Dalton reached the meeting spot. There were several cops involved in the transaction. One cop was dragging a box toward a boat. Dalton seized the moment. He snatched the cop's gun and knocked him out cold with the handle. When he opened the box, he was stunned. It was packed with bundles of cash. Dalton used the same gun to shoot the man he had killed earlier to make it look like Brant's own people turned on him for money. Then he picked up a wooden stick and hit the unconscious cop again, saying he wouldn't remember anything for months. That night, Dalton began preparing a bomb for his next move. Just then, Ellie's father showed up. He admitted that his job was to safely deliver Brant's money, but now Dalton had stolen it. In retaliation, Brant had kidnapped Ellie. Her father, desperate and scared, came as a father seeking help. Dalton was shocked. How did Ellie's dad know he had the money? He explained that his deputy, whom Dalton had supposedly put into a coma, had actually faked it. Dalton had hidden the money, and the deputy had found out. Dalton promised to return the cash and bring Ellie back safely. A few hours later, he took Ellie's boat and arrived at Brant's location. Ellie's dad was already there. Judging by his smiling face, it didn't seem like Ellie had been kidnapped at all. And how could she be? Her dad was Brant's partner. But then Brant confirmed that he really had abducted Ellie. Her father was stunned. Brant would go to any length for money, as he needed it to build his grand hotel. At that moment, Knox also arrived on a boat. But before he could reach them, Dalton triggered the bomb he had placed. The explosion tore through Brant's luxurious boat, which began sinking. Ellie was trapped in one of its cabins. Dalton managed to get her out just in time, and they escaped to a boat where Brant was waiting. In the chaos, they didn't even notice when they reached the shore. Ellie and Brant jumped into the water. Brant had a terrible accident, but somehow survived, until Dalton finished the job. Suddenly, Knox showed up, smashing things left and right. A brutal fight broke out between him and Dalton. Both were absolute beasts, pummeling each other relentlessly. When Brant tried to intervene with his usual blabbering, Knox knocked him out too. The fight raged on for a long time, but eventually, Dalton killed Knox. By then, Ellie's father had also arrived. He told Dalton that it would be best if he left the town, and that he would cover up all the murders. Ellie agreed. With Brant dead, the Roadhouse matter was finally resolved. Dalton was waiting for his bus to leave town when it arrived. Charlie was there too, and they had a final conversation. Just then, Charlie's dad found a box in their shop. Inside was the same book Charlie had once given Dalton for free, and the whole box was filled with cash. By the time Charlie's dad ran to stop him, the bus had already driven off toward its destination.